Before we go to public comment and close, I just wanted to end just one by thanking the council for being here. As they shared, being a member district of the council and having external eyes on our district just brings a higher level of reflection to the system. And so we thank you for the thoroughness of your report. We embrace this report, okay? And because, as I said earlier, it provides us with a framework and a set of actionable recommendations that will not only inform improvements within special education, but within the system as a whole. The recommendations here are designed around a theory of action, and that theory of action has a moral imperative. And that theory of action goes something like this. If we align our services and our resources to create a more inclusive culture, and in an environment, and we have high expectations for the students and the adults, as well as adults, we can, and if we provide an individualized supports needed by both our students and our adults, our students with disabilities can learn and thrive next side by side with their non-disabled peers. And so with that, I'm going to close, and I think we'll go to public comment and then questions by the board. Thank you.
Mr. Barrios?
We have 3 public comments. Renee Webster Hawkins, Angie Sutherland, and Grace Trujillo. I'm sorry, we have 5 public comments.
Hi. We hope you'll indulge us. There's a number of us that wanted to make public comment instead of engaging you for the next 18 or 21 minutes. We'd like to combine our time and maybe just share our reflections on behalf of the ad hoc committee of the Community Advisory Committee for Outcomes in Special Education. I'm Renee Webster Hawkins. I'm the chair of that ad hoc committee. And we met tonight to digest pretty rapidly this really in-depth, broad report that was posted 2 days ago. We want to thank the leadership, your leadership, for soliciting this report. We want to thank the team from Great Schools for really, at first blush, a stellar job at really looking broadly and deeply at our resources, our current status of special education delivery, and providing a really strong blueprint for turning this around on behalf of our students. We love the theory of change that Dr. Taylor articulated and the theory of action. This needs to be a destination district for all students, including students with disabilities. And this report in your hands should not go on the shelf. Hopefully you carry it with you everywhere you go. Just briefly, we appreciate the presentation that Great Schools provided. We'd also like to sort of reorient some of what our initial takeaways are, noting that the report is broken up into 3 broad categories, and looking at the data and monitoring, looking at the organizational structure, and looking at teaching, instruction, and outcomes. The academic outcomes, the highlights that we noted, that in the special day classes, there doesn't seem to be any expectations that those classes are being taught to grade level standards. And that is the law. And so that needs to happen. There's too many students perhaps in those special day classes that don't belong there. They need to be in general ed, but for other decisions that are happening, too many are being assigned to special day classes, that there's staffing ratio concerns, that there's understaffing because of vacancies, and as a result, this special day class system within the district is ineffective. Organizationally, there also was really great description of the the delineation of responsibilities within the special ed division, and how that intersects in a decentralized district, a district that has decentralization as the main theory of instruction, and how that really doesn't fit with special ed, and undercuts the quality of and equity of special education delivery across the district. And again, the staffing ratios are a problem. The workload within the special division is ridiculous. As an administrator, I choked when I read the section of how much responsibilities the supervisors have. The caseloads of the program specialists and the school psychologists, resources need to be devoted to that. I note that Appendix B is an amazing blueprint of a new organization, how we can renovate the special education division. Most notably, it calls for the creation of an executive director of special education, a new position, and the Community Advisory Committee supports this notion and would love to work with you to do a national search to recruit somebody who's effective in special education systems change, so that we can accomplish the blueprint that's before you today. We also note that in the area of the decentralized method of delivery instruction generally in the district, that has presented a problem that has that underserves children with special needs. The degree to which principals dictate their resources and their instructional methodologies on their campus, it actually has an inequitable effect, especially for those principals that don't embrace inclusive practices in all classrooms or devote sufficient resources and quality instruction for kids on their campus. There was a correlation in the report between the litigation, probably some of which you settled tonight, and that's filed against the district, and principals that don't embrace inclusive practices and effective outcomes for kids with disabilities. We note that throughout the report, there's references to social emotional programming, including the SPARK initiative that this board has embraced, but that has not been implemented, and that because that has been the primary strategy for addressing social emotional needs of all kids, the fact that it's not moving forward means that there's nothing left in place for kids with disabilities. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Angie and Grace, who would like to speak to some issues.
Thank you. I'm Angie Sutherland. I'm the chair of the Community Advisory Committee. And I wanted to point out a key takeaway that we had throughout the report with regard to efforts being stalled by our teachers union. So SPARK was one of those efforts, as well as inclusive practices with the whole Appendix D, and also MTSS. So those were some of the efforts that we noted in the report and that we've noted as well for the past couple of years. So the report mentioned that they've never seen any district in the nation where the union has been so influential in halting a district's ability to serve students with disabilities. And so it calls for the board to take measures on that, and also a general education culture that is not supportive to students with disabilities. So I just had a small comment, and Grace will make second to last comment.
I'll become, as I mentioned before, I always talk about the budget. And one of the key things now, what they mentioned before, Renee and Angie, is the fact of this is what happens when you segregate children with special needs. The cost is tremendous over the years. And this goes back to Rachel Holland's case. I think I went back once. I haven't had a chance to give you the information because I was dealing with a lot with my son and issues. But I think I came around like 250 million plus of the cost that's been costing our district for segregating our kids. To give you an example, a child could be in first grade and have behaviors, it's ignored, goes to second, continues to be ignored. Third, it's ignored again. Then this child's suspended and put in non-public schools. These non-public schools would cost you $100 plus, which could easily be maintained in that same classroom setting, which could provide resources, techniques, and trainings for this classroom environment. Just like I said before in busing. This is what happens even in a family when you segregate. I know in our family, my son has been a blessing in so many different ways, because we have provided him. I have sacrificed and stayed home, but I have done other things that the Lord has blessed me in other ways. And I think this is what our district needs. It needs the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, because if we didn't have that in this building right now, we wouldn't be in the situation we are right now. And that's millions and millions of dollars in deficit in the next couple of years, and people not working together. And this report clearly states it. So with that in mind, as the budget I give you is let's work together, because what's happening now is the fact of since Rachel Holland's case, we haven't negotiated anything and trying to figure out costs. That's why I'm constantly here saying, let's figure out which ways, which efficiencies. Busing is an excellent example that you gave, but also to figure out the additional costs that were ignored over the years that could have been used for the proper resources for our schools to be successful. With that, Arlene Anderson wants to say something, so she's going to be talking.
I wanted to talk about difficulty it is to sit around the table with teachers who really don't want to work with all children. African Americans, they don't have such behavior problems that they're intolerable, but they do live in a different kind of culture. And so with the number of kids who are being referred to the SARB, the Student Attendance and Review Boards, the number of kids, how the data is collected from kinder to third grade, by the 8th grade, they are so far behind because willful defiance is a reality. And I don't know what to do with parents who have 55 pages or more of behavioral issues, and just because the student shoved in the kitchen or in the cafeteria, that goes to the permanent record. But when the permanent record and the student is so far behind, but when the student is in the community and they get in trouble, that record follows them to the juvenile hall. And that is looked at from kinder on up. And so we have to look at social and emotional behaviors that we are documenting by people who they're not psychologists, they're just teachers. They have no training in the area of psychology or behavior, but we're letting them do this to a group of people. And I don't understand how come we can't have a community meeting in regards to African American, the failure of this district. My son was successful. All 3 of my children were. I'm not complaining, but I am concerned when I go to try to help other parents who are so far behind that we can't have a conversation as to how to move those students forward, because the teachers say their union contract protects them. They don't have to go do the catch-up when the student is in the 5th grade or the 8th grade and they're at 3rd grade reading level. Well, what happens when the 8th graders is in the 8th grade with 3rd grade reading level? That's failure, but the district keeps them on that track of high school graduation until they drop out. And so a lot of that is just dropout data. Students don't come back. And I think that the African American community really don't understand the offer of faith. They really don't get it, that this is something that should carry them through life. And it's not, because our community, I'm finding, is dependent on that poverty, dependent on the failure. And we have to change our mindset to make our community more successful.
Thank you, Darlene.
So just in closing, a few comments on Darlene's point. The data that you saw tonight should cause all of us to stop what we're doing and figure out how we're going to turn the data around that shows that our African American kids with IEPs are being identified with emotional disturbances at a far higher rate than anyone should accept. And also that our students with disabilities are being suspended at a far higher rate. Just by way of personal anecdote, my son is African American. In first grade, I asked for an assessment, and I asked the school psychologist, we think he has a learning disability. How do you test for dyslexia? And the school psychologist looked at me in the eyes and said, I don't have a clue. Her conclusions, he has attention issues. Fast forward to fourth grade. He was assessed again. We said, we think he has learning disabilities. How do you test for dyslexia? He said, oh, it was hard for him to open up to us. We think he has autism. In the meantime, he was given more and more sight words to memorize, which Ben can tell you, dyslexics can't memorize sight words. He was put in RSP for longer and longer, and he grew into a shell. In October, we pulled him unilaterally and put him in a private school, Loomis Gateway Academy, that specializes in teaching kids with dyslexia. In those 6 months, his reading level has increased 2 grade levels, his math 4. He's a new young man. Before we pulled him, he would often go to bed at night worrying that he's going to end up in juvenile hall. Just last week, he's envisioning a life doing design tech, solving world problems. Moving forward, this report begs for a new standing committee of this board, tasked with special education overhaul and to implement over a long-term strategic plan to implement the recommendations in this blueprint. And the Community Advisory Committee formally requests membership on the board. The report suggests the board should be seeking our feedback from time to time. We need membership on that standing committee. Thank you very much for investing in this report.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Angel Garcia, followed by Nikki Malevsky and Claude Joseph.
What we? Oh, more. I'm sorry. Yes.
Wow, that was hard to follow.
Welcome.
Good evening, board president, board members, superintendent. I have such a lot to say in such a little bit of time, so I'm going to try to fit it all in. I do want special attention to be paid to Appendix D, which is page 61 of the report. I'm going to read you a little passage. It says, well, I'll read you parts of it. So, beginning September 2014 through 15 school year, the parties agreed to establish a work group. That work group didn't happen in the time frame that it was promised that it was going to happen. That work group was started late. In addition, the work group to this day has still not completed its work in regards to Appendix D and the illegal languages that we presented to you guys in the fall of 2014. Although there was discussions that we had, I went to a couple, CAC members went to a couple, they were mostly regarding back and forth, inclusion program, inclusivity, inclusive, what does all that mean? When really we wanted our kids to just, in this foundational document, to just be a part of the school community. Appendix D, the SCTA teacher's contract, is a foundational document. It sets the tone for how teachers are going to work with our students. It sets the climate and the culture. The ultimate goals of all of our students in the district is to be college, career, and life ready. However, climate issues, which I can speak regarding my son, I don't know if you guys remember, but my son spoke to you guys a few years back regarding Appendix D. At that time, he had just started embracing being autistic, wanting to work with other kids, being a leader in his community. Due to climate issues, there's been a 180. My son has, my son has depression. He's talked about wanting to hurt himself, and he really hates having autism. And it's because of climate issues, but when you have a foundational document, such as Appendix D, that really pinpoints, and says that certain children aren't going to be allowed in classrooms, It causes mental health issues for children. I hope all of you got my email that I recently sent regarding May be Mental Health Month. But this really, it needs, this document, it really needs to get rid of that illegal language. It sets the tone for climate in our schools. In addition, our students are left out of various activities, work-based learning. Most students don't get workability programs. It's a minute percentage that get in workability and vocational rehabilitation programs, which means they don't get CTE, they don't get internships, they're not prepared. And our students have very horrible outcomes in regards to being employed. You guys, I asked during the email that you guys be trained on ERMS, our educationally related mental health services. There's some work that needs to be done there. We presented on the Fair Education Act. Our students are still not knowing who disabled leaders are. Melanie Bean, who's been working with us, is awesome. She's doing it on a volunteer basis right now. My son just went to the LGBT youth conference. I saw Michael there. He felt so good coming out of that conference. We need those conferences for our students with disabilities. There's no empowerment activities. They don't hear about leaders in their history and language arts classes. Bullying initiatives need to be serious. It doesn't need to be just a school district-wide comment or report that needs to be put up. Real initiatives need to happen in schools. So thank you for listening to my long comment, but this is real, and we want all of our students to succeed. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Nikki Malevsky.